Okay, welcome everybody. So let's find a nice comfortable place to get started. You can be lying down. I'm going to be seated personally. And if you are seated, feel free to use your props to get nice and comfortable. If you're wanting to lay down, that's fine. You can always join us seated later. And I'm just going to sit up on the edge of my little foam brick. And then take a moment to kind of do your fidgeting, checking in with your breath, adjusting your seat so that you feel like you can sit up tall, but also relax. It's not like a rigid posture. And just start to feel. Connect with the earth and the land that you're on. How your body feels in relationship to the season, the time of day, whatever's going on in your life. Just letting everything settle. And just noticing what your breath is doing naturally. Noticing if it's a little on the shorter side, longer. If you do try to breathe a little more deeply, does that feel good? Does that feel a little tense, a little forced? Just allowing yourself to tune into your inner world via your breath, following your breath in. And let's work with a little pranayama practice, a breathing practice, a really nice simple one that's especially helpful if you need to sort of calm or balance your energies. And especially those of you that are comfortable with this, you can keep your eyes closed. And the mudra that we often use for this is 2 first fingers into the palm. So you've got your thumb and your ring finger free. You could also do it just one hand and the other, or you could do pincer finger and thumb, just whatever's most comfortable is fine. And you kind of rest those fingers near the top of the nostrils. And then you just exhale. The next time your exhale finishes, you're going to seal your right nostril and inhale up along the left nostril. Pause at the top, seal both briefly, and then switch, opening the right nostril and closing the left. Inhale like that, so still through the right nostril. Pause at the top, briefly hold both, and then switch to the left nostril. Staying on the left side, inhaling. Seal both and switch at the top of the breath. Inhaling right. And switch at the top and exhale left. So keep going. The breath switches at the top of the breath. So it's like a little bit of an infinity sign that you get going, which I learned the other day is called a lemnis gate, the word for that symbol. And you'll probably notice that one side of your nose is a little more open than the other, so the breath might be a little bit uneven. And that's okay. One strategy is to work to even the breath. I'm actually a big fan of just allowing the breath to do what it's going to do. So maybe see what it feels like to allow the one side to be slower and just kind of notice what's going on there. And my belief is that the body will usually rebalance itself when allowed to, when given the space to do that. So just take your time. See what it feels like for you. Follow your own rhythm. And eventually you'll exhale out your left nostril, and then you can relax your hands. And then just breathe normally. And normally could mean that you want to sigh or you're just allowing your breath to continue in the same way. Don't worry too much about what breathing normally means. Just kind of relax and take a few moments to notice how you feel. That is a breath that can be quite useful, especially if you find yourself in a bit of a thought pattern or if you're feeling anxious, it just sort of brings you right back home to the breath. And is quite safe for pretty much everybody, if you can breathe through your nose, of course. And I'm going to encourage you again to keep your eyes closed. And if you can keep your legs as they are, please just stay for the moment. If you need to move, of course, that's fine. We're just going to invite the neck in here gently. So I'm just going to keep my hands right where they are on my lap. If that doesn't feel quite right for you, you can put them beside your body, just fingertips to the earth. Keep your chest nice and tall and allow your chin to gently fall forward towards your chest. And just take a few breaths to allow the back of the neck to gently open. You can take a little wobble from side to side, just gently rolling your head to the right and the left within the space of a few centimeters or an inch or so. Just getting that little subtle stretch along the back of the neck. And then you can add to that. So just slowly allowing your head to roll over to one side so that eventually your ear is over your shoulder. And maybe even tilting back slightly to bring the stretch into the front of the neck. And then just nice and slow and lazy, rolling back down to center and then over to the other side. So there's no rush. And again, I'd love for you to just go at your own pace. If you find a nice spot where it feels like there's a good stretch, you can hang out there for a moment. No need to rush through. We'll do this a couple of times, so just gently moving the head from side to side. And I'd love for the intention here to be kind of to relax the neck. So rather than trying to pull or actively stretch, we're just using the weight of the head. And you'll just eventually go to the left, so just even on the two sides and return your head to center. And when you get there, you can softly roll the head up to neutral, and there's no rush to get there. So just keep rolling if you're rolling. When you get back to neutral, you can roll your shoulders a couple of times. And you can reverse the direction of the roll. And then relax your shoulders and just gently turn your head from side to side as if you were looking to the right and to the left, but you don't have to open your eyes unless you want to. Okay, and then coming back through center, let's gently release the legs in front of us and we can give them a little shake. And then step your feet about, well, I guess it's a bit wider than hips distance apart, so max distance apart or so. We'll just take a little bit of a twist here. So I'll just mirror you for this part. So you can bring your knees down to the right and then follow them coming into a little bit of a twist. So right fingertips are behind you, left hand can come to the knee, sitting up nice and tall and just gently spiraling towards the back. Okay, draw the shoulders down the back. Optionally, you could add right ear towards right shoulder and just come back to a little bit of a neck stretch there if that feels good. Head back to neutral, slowly, softly, all the way over to the other side. Coming back through center, letting your knees roll over to the left. Left hand behind you, right hand across to the knee, lifting, gently spiraling. Shoulders down the back, you could release your left ear down towards your left shoulder. And then gently back through center. We're going to return to the first side again. And you can do the exact same thing, the twist, or you can take it into a little ballet pose. So the right hand can plant behind you, you can lift up onto your shins and just take a little bit of a side stretch here. And bringing the hips down and same thing, other side, just gently rolling over. Again, softly twisting, or if you like, pressing into the left hand and rising up. And then bringing the hips down, and we can wash the knees side to side a couple of times. And you may again want to release your legs out in front of you and give them a little shake. And then let's come to our hands and our knees. So you can swing the legs around behind you. Plant the fingers spread underneath the shoulders, knees under the hips. And let's take some cat and cows. So you can start by inhaling into a little back bend shape and then exhaling to curl under. But I do encourage you to follow your breath into different shapes. So you can make circles, you can rock forward and back, move side to side, just allowing some exploration of the spine. Noticing what feels sticky, what feels a little more open. Just kind of notice what your breath is doing here. So ideally your breath and your movement are connected. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but just for now, noticing. And then let's take this into Anahatasana. So you can widen your knees apart a little bit. I like to do this with toes tucked under. Your bum is lifted and you're bringing your fingertips forward and melting the heart down. You can rest your forehead or chin on the ground if that feels accessible, or it could just be floating and just kind of melting that heart back. Lovely. And then you can settle back into child's pose from here, untucking the toes, allowing the big toes to touch. Knees could go even wider or closer together, or maybe they're perfect right where they are, and allowing your belly and chest to rest over the thighs. Arms could be reaching forward, or if you like, you could have them resting beside your hips or in whatever other shape works best for you for child's pose. And just take a few moments to kind of receive this comforting pose for many of us, nice and close to the earth. Breathing into the back body. Okay, from here, let's make our way onto our bellies. So you can just sort of slide yourself all the way forward onto your belly. Legs out nice and long behind you. And if being on your belly is not going to work for you today, you could do this on your hands and your knees. Okay. So let's see. Let's start laying with the upper body just kind of resting. I've got kind of my chin on my stacked palms, but you could have forehead down as well. And let's just focus on the lower body. So if you're on hands and knees, you're just going to do this one leg at a time, essentially. Gently gather your belly in, squeeze your glutes, and press the tops of the feet down. And then as you next inhale, just gently lift up your straight right leg. And then put it back down. So it doesn't have to be a very big movement. And then the left leg is going to lift, feeling the back line gently contract. And place that back down. So we're just going to do side to side a couple of times. Lifting the right leg behind you, lowering it down, and then the left leg. And I just want you to kind of feel your glutes. A little bit of your lower back is going to be working here. The core is just gently supporting that. And you can keep doing that, especially if you are working on hands and knees, or you can lift both of your legs up and just kind of hold for a breath or two, hugging the inner thighs together. And then relax, then rest. You can let the heels drop apart if you want. You can wobble your bum from side to side. Sometimes that feels really nice in the lower back. And then take your arms into a cactus shape beside you and just stabilize the legs. So just pressing them down, glutes engaged, core gently engaged. And we'll just lift and lower with the breath. So inhaling to rise up and exhaling to gently fold down. Inhaling to rise. So my elbows are coming up a little bit and I'm pressing into the ground just slightly. And if you want a higher lift, you could have your hands closer to you, but it's not really, we're not trying to necessarily get to a specific height. And if you're not on your belly, this one you could actually do seated, just working with cactus arms, opening the chest. Okay, and next time you come up, you may want to stay and just sort of see how that feels, holding the pose for a couple of breaths. Elbows are gently drawing down, shoulders down the back, and think belly really long. And rest, relax, bum can relax. You can do that wobble of the hips if you want. Good. Okay, one more here. We're going to interlace the fingers around behind the back. This would be a good one to use your strap if you have a little bit tighter shoulders and you want to grab something around behind you. You would have the palms face down if you're holding the strap here. Okay. Otherwise, interlacing the fingers, pressing the tops of the feet down, again, just stabilizing that lower body, gently engaging the core, hug the elbows together, and lift your chest up as you stretch the fists away. Think long back of your neck. It doesn't have to be high. Just breathing here. And if you're feeling really good, really comfortable, you want a little bit more, maybe you could lift up your feet. Nice long line. And then rest. You can take your forehead or a cheek down, relax your bum, and again, wobble if that feels good. Okay, let's flip over onto our backs. Just gonna do a little bit of core for the front body here before we move on to some other things. So go ahead and have your feet on the mat, knees bent, and just take a moment to feel your core. So inhaling, and as you exhale, gather your pelvic floor in and up, belly button presses back. Just feeling everything kind of gathering in through the center. Okay, and then keep all that nice and steady and inhale to lift up your right foot and exhale to gently put it down. And then lift up your left foot and gently put it down. So just starting with a little bit of movement, focusing on stability of the pelvis. You can stay right here. Some of you might want to add your upper abdominals. You can interlace your fingers around behind the back of the head and lift the shoulder blades up. That's just going to add a few more of the abdominal muscles. And if you feel like you want a little bit more from here, you could float the feet up and tap one foot down at a time. That's just going to add a little bit more weight. Yeah, and I don't care which variation you're doing. I want you to think more about the belly button drawing in and up. Okay, if you still want a little bit more, you could straighten the legs and work with a straight leg coming down. That's just going to be more weight to add to the abdominals, but you're still focusing on belly button drawing in and up, keeping the pelvis nice and steady, not grinding your teeth. Shouldn't hurt your back. Good, you guys. I'm just going to do one more each side. And with the breath if you can. And then let's rest. I'm going to come into happy baby. So letting the knees go wide, soles of the feet to the sky. Do a little rock from side to side here. You could also just relax your legs on the ground. I find sometimes after core, happy baby is just the thing, and it might feel really nice on the lower back as well after those little prone back bends that we were working on. Okay, let's release the legs, give them a little shake, and we're going to come back to our hands and our knees. So you're welcome to flip over to hands and knees, like rolling to one side, or if you want, you could rock and roll forward and back and cross your legs underneath you. And then let's take a couple more of those cat and cows, again, with that intuitive style, if it works for you. Just kind of feeling how things might feel a little bit different in your body after doing that work. Sort of rinsing it out. And then downward facing dog. So you can tuck your toes under. You might want to walk your hands a little farther forward, a little wider. And let's move a little bit in this downward dog. So bending one knee at a time, rocking your hips. Shoulders nice and deep in their sockets, hugging the elbows just a little bit together. And eventually feet to hands coming into standing forward bend. Hanging down over your legs or resting elbows on bent knees or swaying or bending one knee at a time. So you can kind of explore this one to see what's going to work for you today. And the only thing to really avoid here is locking your knees. You can have them straight, but there's nothing wrong with having the knees bent here, especially if that makes your lower back feel better. And then let's roll up. So bend the knees, gather in the belly, and slowly come on up. When you get to the top, you can do your fidgets and wiggles, or maybe you're just still and that feels right. Okay, lovely. Okay, so let's talk about the breath for a moment, and we're going to talk about the breath in movement. So we're going to talk about Ujjayi, which we normally do in a vinyasa class, but we can definitely use it here. So the thing that, maybe I'll take my sweater off for this part actually so you can see better. So with Ujjayi, we want to have this feeling of, on the inhale, the ribs are lifting and widening, okay, on all sides ideally. There's more flexibility kind of in the front, so we might find ourselves breathing really forward. So try to think of up and back as well. And I'm just going to exaggerate what that might look like. So here's me breathing with my belly. Okay, here's me breathing Ujjayi. So I'm gathering in a little bit and I'm focusing more on the ribs lifting and expanding. And on the exhale, they kind of draw together. One of my favorite ways to see this is to touch the fingertips at the low ribs. And as you inhale, try to get the fingertips to separate. And they come back together on the exhale. Okay, there's also a lift as well as a widening. Okay, so it's not that I'm not holding my belly kind of rigidly, but it's more so that I'm trying to lift and widen the diaphragm so that the breath moves more into this kind of midsection here, rather than only being in the belly, which sometimes we want the belly breath, but here it's a lengthen and lift. Okay, making sense so far? Yeah, good, okay. So when we do this breath, one of the things that you might feel happening is that the sort of column of your belly lengthens and almost stretches, which can feel really good. And we can use this in our movement. The other thing that you might notice is even without trying to make the whispering sound at the back of the throat, it's probably happening when you focus on it in this way. I don't know if you can hear it through my mic. But I don't need to like tighten, it's just happening because the diaphragm at the back of the throat is connected to this diaphragm and the pelvic floor diaphragm, so they all move together. Now, when I'm doing a half sun salutation, which I know you guys know relatively well, it's nice and simple, I can just do it sort of with my arms and my bones. But if I do it with my breath, I'm just going to show you what one of these might look like. And again, I'll exaggerate a little bit. It doesn't have to be quite this much. So on the inhale, my ribs are going to come up with my breath, and then on the exhale, I'm folding down. This is my favorite part, the halfway lift, drawing forward. I'm almost hollowing my belly to sort of draw forward through this almost back bend shape. And then as you exhale and completely release, you can actually deepen that exhale. Then I bend the knees and I use my arms to help me lift the ribs And bring the hands together in front of the heart. It's very common to lift the shoulders up as we're getting to know this breath. That's actually not such a bad thing as long as we're not creating tension in the shoulders. They can naturally lift and lower a little bit. Want to try that? You guys have probably done this with me before, but it's always nice to have a reminder for me too. So let's try it with the breath, and feel free to unmute if you have any questions, okay? So again, go with your own breath. You don't have to go with mine, so that you can get that really full, complete inhale and exhale. So as you're ready, inhale, reaching up, feel those ribs expanding and rising. Exhale, bend the knees, fold all the way down. Halfway lift, hollowing the belly, expanding the chest like a balloon forward, like a parachute filling with air. And then on the exhale, completely fold and release. Feel that almost contraction of the core at the bottom of the exhale. Bend the knees on your inhale, rising all the way up, letting your arms help you to expand that parachute of the diaphragm. And as you exhale, nice and simple, hands to the heart. Good, and then go again. Inhaling. And exhaling. Parachute opens. And folds. All the way up. And hands to heart. And again. Let's take about one more round. And when you return to standing, just take a moment to receive, to feel. You can allow your breath to move down into your belly if you want to, or you can keep on working with this ujjayi if it feels good. Notice your heat, blood flow. That type of breath is really beautiful for getting just energy moving through the body. Notice the mood as well. Okay. So in that demo, I was exaggerating quite a bit, but I honestly, sometimes I like to really just do that breath quite deeply. But when I'm doing it in a pose, which we'll try in a moment, it might be a little bit subtler. So it might look a little bit more like, so there's still that lift and expansion, and the more we do it, the more the body gets used to it. But it's just a little gentler. And I do want to make sure that I'm trying to send the breath into kind of the adrenal glands, the back ribs, which is always the area that for me gets a little compressed. I want to pull back into that area a little bit. Any questions about that? You guys feeling good?
No, it feels good. And thank you for that parachute image. That was really helpful. It's I was reminded how the breath leads the movement, not the other way around.
Exactly.
I don't know if that's a valid statement, but yeah, that's what it felt like that to me. Although it also felt like suddenly I was thinking so much about my breath, which maybe is something I need to do more. I don't know.
Yeah, that's absolutely valid. And ideally the breath does lead the movement. And we start to, in yoga, kind of explore like, you know, if we think of in yoga, they talk about winds, vayus. So the inhale is prana, vayu is upward flowing. So naturally we would want to reach our arms up on the inhale, right? And exhale is apana, vayu. So naturally we would want to fall forward. So you'll notice that most of the movement, specifically of the sun salutation, it's just following the waves of the breath, right? So if you were just breathing and letting your body feel the movements, this is an example of what the body might do, which is quite a lovely way, I think, of practicing yoga rather than focusing on pose first. Yeah. Okay. Let's try it in a relatively still pose. My favorite place to practice this is Warrior One, and I'll explain why once we get there. So let's go ahead and step the right foot back, squaring the hips, back heel is pressing down, front knee is bent. And then we'll interlace the fingers except for the first one, and we'll send the sort of forward and up. It doesn't really matter how high they go. They might go higher as you're comfortable here. Now I want you to think again about that breath as you inhale, lifting that parachute of the diaphragm up, especially the back. And as you exhale, maybe just deepening into the legs a little bit, that could be invisible. And I find when I breathe Ujjayi like this in Warrior One, what it does is it actually lengthens my psoas, because the psoas muscle, which is kind of up along here, connects to through the diaphragm essentially to the back ribs. So when I'm pulling that breath up, I actually feel the stretch more deeply in the front of my thigh. Yeah, so just trying that. Okay, and then let's bring the hands to the hips and straighten the front leg. We'll keep playing a little bit with the breath in a bit of a sequence. We're gonna come into pyramid pose. Feel free to grab your blocks if that's helpful. And we've got the legs straight or straightish. Feel free to adjust the back foot. You can bring it in a little closer if that's helpful. Square the hips. And then we can use that same halfway lift that we talked about. So inhaling, that parachute opens. And on the exhale, there might be a little bit of room to fold down a bit deeper. So we often do this little flow, the rise and fall, but I don't necessarily always talk about connecting it with the breath in this way. And I find when I do, oh man, it feels so good. It's nice on the hamstring, but I also feel that kind of space coming into my belly and my spine. And it can slow us down a little, which is nice. Let's take one more like this. Okay, and then from here, take that little halfway lift. Your right hand can stay where it is, or it might go a little bit wider, and the left arm can open to the sky, coming into a little twist. And leaning that left hip a little bit back, just getting that nice space into the outer hip. And feel free to try that breath here. Again, it's a little harder when we're twisted. Beautiful. And then gently release the hands back down. You can simply step to the top of your mat. Take a halfway lift and fold, and then let's rise up. And if you'd like to roll up nice and slow, feel free to do that. You can sweep up if you want. And again, when you get to the top, just noticing your mood, how it feels like the breath and the blood are flowing through your body. And then let's step the left foot back. Coming into Warrior One, so sort of a long walking stance, hip square, back heel pressing down, tailbone down, reaching the arms up, and then the breath. So inhaling, really lifting the ribs up off the hips. And exhaling, maybe deepening a little bit, finding your core gently. And one of the things that Ujjayi is a core breath, but that doesn't mean that it is a contraction into the abdominal muscles necessarily. For me, I think of it as making space in the core, and it kind of draws the transverse abdominis in and lengthens. So it's not about crunching forward, but finding that length. And just see if you notice anything different in the sensations of the pose as you breathe this way. Lovely. And then let's take the hands to the hips, straighten that front leg and bring your hands down to the blocks or the floor. Adjust your stance if you need to. Sometimes back foot coming in a little closer can be helpful. And then use that breath as you inhale, lengthening. And as you exhale, melt. Inhale, lengthening, parachuting, finding that long belly. And what that does in part is it creates space for us to be able to flow down a little deeper. And again, it doesn't matter what this looks like. You have to think more about how it feels in the breath. Okay, and then we'll take that little halfway lift. Left hand can stay where it is. It's fine if going a little bit wider works better as well. And then take the right arm up to the sky, coming to a little bit of a twist. Drawing that right hip back. And then bringing the hand down and softly stepping back to the top of your mat. Lengthen and fold. And then again, rise up, taking your time. If you want to roll up over a few breaths, feel free to do that. And maybe you're just meeting yourself in stillness there. Maybe there's a little wiggling or fidgeting that you want to do. Check in with your breath, what it's wanting to do, what it feels like. Good. Okay, let's come down through a squat. So you can take your feet about mat's distance, turn the toes out a little, and then begin to sink down. And you might pause halfway. You might come down just sort of simply into the pose. You might find that you want to sit on a little piece of support or have something underneath your heels or sit right down. These are all options. So I don't want you in any pain in your knees, okay? And then try an ujjayi here. It's going to feel a little bit different. This is a bit more of a compressed pose. And then try a belly breath. So just kind of relaxing the belly a little bit, let the breath move down a bit lower. And just notice the different sensations. It's not necessarily better or worse. It's just going to feel a bit different in different shapes. Lovely. And then let's sit down again. And you can take those windshield wipers side to side. Okay, so I'd like to do a little bit more psoas release as we started to do with the Warrior One, but differently here. So I'd love for you to have a brick if possible, but you can do this with pretty much anything. I just find the brick is a nice firm piece of feedback. So yeah, bolster, whatever you've got, but if you have a brick, that would be great. And then just go ahead and lay down. And you're gonna take the brick underneath your sacrum. So lowest part of the lower back, top of the bum. And I find that the lowest edge of the brick is fine. It's nice and stable and it gives me a good feedback. But you could go second highest height if you want to. It's going to feel a little bit more intense. And if there's any pain here, you can do this whole thing with no props as well. Or if you just don't have anything. That's fine. So even just beginning here, noticing what this feels like to be in a slight inversion. And I'd recommend a belly breath here. So really relaxed breath down into your belly. And already you might feel a bit of a release into that sort of belly area. And you can stay here, we'll get a little more active with it. So you can bring the left knee in towards your body, holding onto the knee with interlaced fingers. Hug the knee a little bit wide as the right leg goes straight, foot flexes. And now breathe into your belly and notice what that feels like. Nice, soft, easeful breath. And then when you're ready, step one foot to the earth and then the other. And just pause for a beat, soften. Then we'll do the second side. So you can bring in your right knee, extend the left leg out long, hugging the knee a bit wide to the side. And you want your leg, your straight left leg, pretty active. You're not trying to lift it, you're just straightening it. But see if you can soften into the belly, really let the breath go down. This is a lovely pose for digestion, among other things. And then you can gently step one foot and then the other to the earth. And just take a moment to feel that breath still in the belly. Then you can stay right here and relax, or we'll do both legs. So you can extend them out long, both of them, reaching your arms up over your head, holding the elbows, flex the feet, and hug them a little together as you get nice and long for the belly. And here I'd love for you to try the Ujjayi breath. Try to pull the ribs and the hips away from each other. And feel free to stay there a bit longer. You can keep experimenting with your breath or gently come out, stepping your feet to the earth and coming to rest. You can lift your hips up and slide that block out to the side, and then you may want to hug your knees into your chest. You may want to flop the legs out like Shavasana. Those are both good instincts. Just take a few moments to receive. We're not quite in Shavasana yet. We'll get there soon. When we can get a really good stretch into the psoas, it can release stress. Sometimes it feels so nice. I had a student once describe it as having a very tropical feeling. And I just love that. There's something about that that really resonated for me. It feels tropical when we release the psoas. Okay, so when you're ready, let's come into a little hip opener. I'm going to offer thread the needle, just keeping it nice and simple. But if you have a favorite one, feel free to take that. Otherwise, step your feet to the earth and take your right ankle across your left thigh. You can stay here or hold on to the back of the left thigh with your interlaced fingers. Right hand goes in between the legs. Keep your right foot flexed, and you can either be still or you can gently rock from side to side. Specifically, as you rock to the left, you will probably feel a little more sensation in your hip. And this is a nice place to breathe into the belly. The Ujjayi is really helpful when we're doing standing postures and we need to kind of support the spine. But when we're laying on our backs, the spine is already supported, so we can breathe a little more into the belly. And then you can release that when you're ready. I like to shake the legs up to the sky. You could also have the feet on the floor and wash the knees. And then come to the second side. So you can start with the feet on the ground, left ankle to the right thigh, holding on to the back of the right leg. Left foot is flexed. Gently drawing the legs in, maybe rocking side to side, maybe not. Again, just really allowing the breath to move down into the belly. So you might even feel your belly kind of pressing up against your thighs, depending on how close in you are. And just allow that belly to be soft and spacious. And then when that feels complete, you can gently release. And again, if shaking the legs up to the sky feels good, go ahead and do that. And then we're going to take a little twist. So I'm just going to offer my favorite variation. Feel free to adjust for you. I like to roll all the way over onto one side. I'm on my left here. And I just gather the belly in, or sorry, gather the lower back in a little bit. Knees are stacked. And then I roll my right shoulder open. You could have a block between your knees here if that feels more comfortable. And you could also adjust the angle of the knees. They could move a little bit away or a little bit closer in, but you do want to keep that little natural curve in the lower back. You could turn your head to the right or even rock the head a little side to side. Different benefits to breathing different ways here in the twist. I like to usually breathe into my belly, but I do like to keep a little bit of life in the top hip, that's my right hip, lengthening away from my shoulders so that I'm not kind of collapsing into my right side. And then I will return to my left side and then roll all the way over to the right. Set up in the same way, knees together, lower back drawing in a little bit, and then opening the left shoulder. And again, just a little bit of lengthening on that top side so that the hip isn't kind of flopping in. That doesn't have to be anything too intense, just keeping space in the back. If it feels right to breathe into the belly, you can. If you're feeling a little more sensitive here, breathing a bit more ujjayi, hugging the belly in a little bit more might serve you better. This is something that we get to know with our bodies as we experiment. Gaze to the left, maybe rocking the head if that feels good. And then you can roll to your right and then to your back, and we're going to prepare for Shavasana. So you might need to take a little symmetrical, it doesn't even have to be a full pose, even just a movement, hugging the knees into the chest before you come to your rest. And if you want to set up your Shavasana in some way, like with the bolster underneath, if you like doing legs up the wall, you could do that. If you have a last pose that you need before you can rest, go ahead and do that. Your time to get comfortable. You can take a nice deep breath anywhere. And then the intention in Shavasana is to really let go of any control of the breath or thoughts. It's to receive fully, to let go. And take a moment to notice how you're feeling. And if you'd like to stay and you have the time, feel free to stay as long as you'd like. Otherwise, you can deepen your breath again and start to bring some small movements into your toes and fingers. Maybe take a stretch. Draw your knees in and roll over to one side. And then find your way up to a seat. Hands at your heart or over top or wherever feels most right. Gently bowing your mind to your hands, honoring and acknowledging whatever allowed you to be here in your practice today. Honoring and acknowledging the long and complex lineage of teachers that is with us here in our practice. Honoring and acknowledging the sacredness of the land that we practice on. Thank you for sharing that.